Hello, we're back again, and today we're going to be making a dish for those that gave up meat during Lent. It's going to be super simple, super flavorful. Make sure you stay throughout the whole video because I'm going to be giving a lot of chef tips throughout. Without further ado, let's go. We're going to start off by getting some cherry tomatoes roasted off in the oven. So right here, I've already washed them, and we're just going to put them right in a metal bowl. We're going to put a little avocado oil on them. I like using avocado oil when I roast vegetables or cook things at high temperatures as opposed to extra virgin olive oil. You really only want to be using extra virgin olive oil when you're finishing because it denatures it when it reaches hot temps, which kind of makes it not that good for you or for your body. Stay with oils that have a higher smoking point. We're just gonna heavily season them with sea salt, kosher salt, preferred. Don't use iodized salt when cooking with vegetables. I stay away from iodized salt indefinitely. I don't use it at all in my cooking. So right here I have a pound of tomatoes, and I put about a half teaspoon of salt on them. Just give those a little tossy toss in our bowl. And we're just gonna put those right on a sheet tray with parchment paper. Now, I'm going to pop them in the oven at 375 degrees until they get nice and a little color on them, nice and roasted. All right, so now that our tomatoes are roasted in the oven, while those cook, we're going to start our caramelized onions. Now, right here, I have a sweet onion, and I'm just going to cut off the tip and the butt. You can discard that. Cut it down the center and take off the first layer. You can just discard your scraps. We're just going to slice it as thin as we can get it. It's okay if it's a little thick and your cuts aren't perfectly uniform. The important thing is that you just do your best and slice it as thin as you can. We're going to go put that in a saute pan with some avocado oil as well and get those nice and caramelized. All right, so we're going to start off with a high heat, and we're going to put some oil in the pan and just put all of our onions right in there. All right, and we're just going to give these a nice quick little stir. We're going to turn our heat down a little bit to a medium flame. I just like to start them off in a hot pan to get them going. But once they get going, roughly about a minute or so in the pan, it's important to turn your heat down low so you don't burn your onions. So we're going to keep our eye on these and stir these periodically. And while these are rocking, we're going to get our broccoli going as well. All right, so our cherry tomatoes are roasting in the oven and our onions are caramelizing on the stove. Remember, we're going to be stirring those periodically. I'd say every 3 to 4 minutes, you want to give them a nice stir in the pan so they don't burn. So next we're going to get our broccoli. What I like to do is get my knife, make sure it's really sharp. All right, so the easiest way to do this is just to start going right in. Nick them off the stem. Now that we have our broccoli all cut off the stem, on the base end I cut it off, just get a little niche in it and just kind of peel it off to the side. Cut it and pull apart. And that's going to give you a more natural, authentic looking cut instead of it being just like harsh down the center. So we're going to do that to all of our broccoli. Remember, they don't have to be perfect. We're going to blanch them and shock them on the stove. All right, so now that our broccoli is all cut up, let's go over and blanch them on the stove. Let's go. All right, so our water is almost boiling. Right now we're going to add our salt. And I'm putting about a tablespoon of salt for roughly 4 cups of water. We're going to give our onions a quick stir. And if it's looking a little too dry, don't be afraid to put a little bit more oil in the pan. 2 teaspoons at a time. All right, perfect. Now our water is boiling. We're going to come over here with our whole cutting board. And we're going to bring it to the edge and just drop it in very gently. Be very careful as the water is like really hot, obviously. And we're just going to get those down in the water. Use your spoon to make sure they're all covered. And as you see, as they're blanching, it's bringing out the chlorophyll out of the broccoli. So they're getting rich and vibrant green. We're going to just leave them in here for about 1 minute. While those are blanching, we're going to, again, give our onions another little stir. So you can see they're going really quickly. All right, so we're going to kill the heat on our pot. Careful, the handle's pretty hot as well. We're going to come over here to the sink and just get yourself a colander. And we're going to strain all that hot water into our sink. We're done with the pot, so we can throw that in as well. And then immediately, we're going to put those in our ice bath. And we're going to leave these in here for about 1 minute. We're not going to leave them in too long because we don't want our broccoli to become waterlogged. Now we're going to bring it back to the sink and give it another strain. I'm going to bring our bowl over, and I'm just going to take them out by hand because there's still a lot of ice in there, and I don't want any of that ice on the plate. And I'm just putting these on a couple layers of paper towels to pull out any of the moisture that we can before we saute them. All right, now while our broccoli is drying out at room temp for a while and our onions are still going, we're going to get our salmon. Now I just got this from the grocery store. I like to get it from the case itself because it's typically a little more fresh than the stuff that they have on display or whatever in the bags. Right here, we just have some Atlantic salmon. I went with salmon today just because it seems to be like the fish that most people like. And I'm just going to put it on a plate with a couple layers of paper towel on them. And I'm going to get my paper towel and just pat it dry. All right, so we're going to take our onions off the stove, kill the heat. Now, I didn't take these to a full caramelization because for what I'm eating today, I kind of want them to still have a little bit of meatiness to them. I guess that's a good word for it. So these aren't completely caramelized. They still have a body. That's the word I was looking for, some more body. All right, we're going to start cooking our salmon, but before we do that, we're going to take our tomatoes out of the oven real quick. All right, these are beautiful. This is what they should look like. These have been cooking in 375 for roughly about 40 to 45 minutes. So I just set those on top of the stove, and now we're going to get our salmon sauteing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get our salt, and we're going to season it very generously. Don't be afraid to use a decent amount of salt. And I like seasoning both sides of my salmon. I like seasoning the skin and the meat. All right, let's go over the stove and start cooking. So right now we have our flame on a medium-high heat, and we're just going to let our pan heat up for about 1.5 minutes with nothing in it. Now, this is going to help prevent our salmon from sticking to the pan when we cook it. And while that's heating up, I'm just going to bring over our broccoli too. Because after we sear our salmon, we're going to cook it in the same pan that we cooked our fish in. And we're just going to get that extra bit of like umami flavor from the salmon, and it'll really penetrate the broccoli as well. So now that our pan's been heating up on a medium-high flame for about 1.5 minutes, we're going to add a generous amount of oil, roughly about a tablespoon. And we're going to give that a nice little swirl. Be gentle because you don't want that hot oil jumping out of the pan and getting on you, because trust me, it's not feel good. And we're going to let this heat up too until we start to see it smoking ever so slightly. And that's just called bringing your pan up to smoking point. Ta-da! As you can see, it happens really quickly. So I don't even know if you can see it from the camera, but it's smoking. At this point, we're going to grab our salmon, give it one quick little swirl, put your salmon in, like it's swimming away from you so it doesn't splash up at you. And we're going to push that down. Now I'm using my hands because I've been cooking for a long time and the splatters of hot oil don't really bother me. But if you're afraid, you can always, once you put it in, get your spatula and press it down. So we're going to turn it to a medium flame. So we're going to drop the temperature ever so slightly. Now you don't want to step away at this point because you don't want it to burn. So we're really babysitting our salmon here. And I like to cook my salmon about 75% of the way through, skin side down. That ensures we get a nice crispy skin on our salmon. And you can tell when it's about 75% of the way cooked through by the sides of it. You see how it's starting to change color on the bottom? Once it gets a little more to the top, that's when we're going to flip it. So our salmon's been cooking roughly 7 to 8 minutes. You can see how it's starting to change color on the top of it and along the sides. So now we're going to flip it. Now it's a little dark right there. I probably had it a little too hot when I put the salmon in. I don't mind a little dark skin, a little extra crispy is fine. We'll just say it's rustic. And we're going to finish cooking it on this side. Now I like to give it a little squeeze on the sides. And if it's too squishy, you know it still needs a little bit of time. So we're going to cook this for about 4 minutes. All right, so now we're going to take our salmon off the pan. We're going to set it here on our plate. Now to that pan, we're going to put in our broccoli. Now it's important when cooking and sauteing not to overcrowd our pan. Now that our broccoli is in, we're going to season it with a little bit of salt. And we're not going to disturb it too much. Let it get a nice saute on it. Remember, we're at a medium heat right now. So right now it's ready to give a little bit of flippy action. We're going to release it. Just give it a quick little jump in the pan. Now we're going to let it go for about 1 more minute. All right, so it's been about 1 minute. At this point, we're going to get some of our tomatoes that we roasted in the oven, and we're just going to put those in our pan. A generous amount. I'd say I'm using about 1/2 cup of the tomatoes. We're just going to let that go for about 20 seconds. All right, and we're going to give that a quick little stir. If you feel intimidated to give it a little toss in the pan like I'm doing, you can literally just stir it with a spoon. All right, after that, we're going to let it go for about 30 more seconds. All right, so now that our veggies are finished sauteing, we're going to pull those off the stove right now. And I got a plate here, our salmon here, and some other fun stuff that we got going on. So be very careful because our pan is hot. Spoon these out onto our plate in a nice little mound. I like doing that because it gives it a little height to the dish. You don't have to do that, it just looks good. All right, so we got that going on. And then we're going to get some of our caramelized onions. And we're going to put those right on top. And then get our salmon. Just put our salmon right in the center. Now to hide our rusticness, we're just going to get a little more onions and just put those right on top of the charred end of the skin. We didn't char all of it, so that's fine. Like I said, I like it a little crispy, but that's me. All right, so on top of that, we're going to put a little bit of balsamic reduction. Now, if you want the recipe for this, I have a YouTube video on how to make that. We're just going to drizzle that right on top. I'm going to see if I can put the link to my balsamic reduction recipe at the end of the video. So let's dig in. I'm going to cut into the salmon. I'm going to get some of the broccoli and the tomato and the caramelized onion. We're going to get a nice big bite of salmon. Now, I love this stuff, so I'm just going to put a little bit more on top. Let's dig in. That's so delicious. The salmon's super tender, super moist. That skin is nice and crispy. Broccoli, perfect. The caramelized onions and the sweetness of the balsamic are really nice. And the cherry tomatoes have just enough of that acid to cut through that sweetness and that fattiness. It's delicious. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned a lot today. And in the comments section down below, give me some suggestions for some future videos to make. I'll pick the best comment and I'll feature it in one of my future videos. Until next time, let's go.